The crack of skin against skin echoed through Oshodi Central Market like a gunshot. Chief Nnamdi Kalu, the most powerful man in Metro City, staggered backward, his designer sunglasses flying off his face. The crowd of hundreds who had been cheering his arrival just seconds ago fell into stunned silence. Then chaos erupted. Screams, gasps. 1,000 phone cameras turned toward the same impossible sight. A barefoot girl in filthy clothes, her hands still raised, standing over the billionaire she had just slapped with every ounce of strength in her malnourished body. Security guards rushed forward like a tidal wave. But before they reached her, the girl screamed words that would change everything. "Don't touch his hand. The powder. He'll die." Her voice cracked with desperation, but it was drowned out by the roar of the outraged crowd. Within seconds, she disappeared beneath a pile of uniformed bodies, her cries muffled as someone's knee pressed into her back. Chief Kalu touched his burning cheek, his face a mask of shock and humiliation. Around him, his entourage scrambled to help him to his feet while the crowd began to chant, "Lock her up! Lock her up!" Nobody noticed the well-dressed man in the expensive suit who had been standing beside the chief moments before, now slipping quietly through the crowd, his right palm still glistening with something that caught the afternoon sun. 24 hours earlier, Amara Dike had woken up with a roof over her head. It wasn't much of a roof, just the sagging ceiling of a cramped room she shared with 3 other women in the slums on the edge of Metro City, but it was shelter. She had scraped together just enough money to pay half of last month's rent, promising her landlord she would have the rest by morning. She had lied. She had nothing. "Please, Mr. Okonkwo," Amara begged as the heavy-set man grabbed her threadbare bag and threw it into the muddy street. "Just 2 more days. I have a lead on some work at the factory. 2 days, I swear." 2 days? Mr. Okonkwo's laugh was harsh and joyless. "You said that 2 weeks ago, Amara. You said it a month before that. I'm not running a charity." He pointed down the narrow alley. "Out, now, before I call people to throw you out." Amara's hands trembled as she picked up her bag, now soaked with dirty water. Inside were all her possessions. 1 spare shirt, a faded photograph of her mother, who died 3 years ago, and a small New Testament her grandmother had given her before Amara ran away from her uncle's house, where his wandering hands had made sleep impossible. She was 22 years old, and she had nothing. The door slammed shut. She heard the bolt slide home with a finality that made her knees weak. For a long moment, Amara just stood in the alley, letting the late afternoon sun beat down on her head. Somewhere nearby, a woman was cooking, and the smell of frying plantains made Amara's stomach clench. She couldn't remember when she had last eaten a full meal. That night, Amara walked. She had nowhere to go, so she simply walked through the city as it transformed from day to dusk to darkness. She saw office workers rushing home, their faces tired but their bellies full. She saw mothers buying groceries from street vendors, already planning tomorrow's meals. She saw teenage couples sharing ice cream, laughing about nothing, living lives that seemed impossible to her now. When had she last laughed like that? Had she ever? Around midnight, exhausted and dizzy with hunger, Amara found herself at Oshodi Central Market. During the day, it was a chaotic carnival of commerce where thousands of vendors sold everything from fresh fish to stolen phones. But at night, after the last traders had packed up and gone home, it became something else, a refuge for people like her. The invisible ones, the forgotten ones. She wasn't alone. Under the tin awnings and between the locked stalls, she could see shadows of other homeless people settling in for the night. An old man with wild gray hair muttering to himself. A young woman, maybe even younger than Amara, curled up with a baby wrapped in dirty cloth. 2 teenage boys sharing a cigarette they had probably found on the ground. None of them looked at each other. There was an unspoken rule here. You don't ask questions. You don't make eye contact. You just survive the night and hope tomorrow is different. Amara found a relatively clean spot near a vegetable stall and laid down her bag as a pillow. The concrete was hard and cold beneath her, but she was too tired to care. Above her, The Lagos sky was orange with light pollution, and she could hear the distant sound of traffic on the expressway. As she closed her eyes, she wondered if this was it, if this was all her life would ever be. The thought was so heavy it pressed on her chest like a physical weight. She dreamed of her mother. In the dream, her mother was cooking jollof rice in their old house in the village, before the sickness came, before the debt, before everything fell apart. "Amara," her mother said, turning from the stove with that gentle smile, "you're stronger than you know. Don't forget that." But when Amara tried to answer, she woke up instead, cold and alone on the market floor. Morning came too quickly. Amara woke to the sound of traders arriving, rolling up metal shutters, arranging their goods, shouting greetings to each other in Yoruba and Igbo and Pidgin English. The market was coming alive, and people like her had to disappear before the real business began. She grabbed her bag and moved quickly to the edges, trying to make herself small. But then, her stomach growled so loudly it hurt, and she made a decision. She would work. Even if nobody wanted to hire her, she would find a way to be useful. She approached a young woman setting up a tomato stand, the vegetables arranged in perfect pyramids of red and orange. "Please, ma," Amara said, keeping her eyes down respectfully. "Can I help you carry anything or clean up? I'm very strong. I can work hard." The woman looked her up and down with obvious distaste. "Move along. You'll scare my customers." Amara tried again at a fish stand, where a large man was unloading crates of ice-packed mackerel. "Sir, please, I just need—" "Are you deaf?" the man snapped. "Nobody wants your dirty hands touching their goods. Go beg somewhere else." 4 more rejections. 6, 10. Amara's face burned with humiliation, but she kept trying because what choice did she have? Finally, an older woman selling fruits from a wooden cart looked at her with something that wasn't quite pity, but wasn't cruelty either. The woman was perhaps 70, with deep lines around her eyes and a wrapper tied around her ample waist. A small sign on her cart read, "Mama Sola's Fresh Fruits." "You look hungry, child," Mama Sola said quietly. Amara's throat tightened. Kindness was harder to bear than cruelty. "I am, Mama. I can work for food, anything." Mama Sola studied her for a long moment, then reached into her cart and pulled out a large orange and a sachet of pure water. "Here. No work required. Just eat." "Mama, I can't just eat," the old woman said firmly. "God says we should feed the hungry. I'm just doing what he says." Amara took the orange with shaking hands. She peeled it right there, not caring that juice ran down her fingers, and ate it so fast she almost choked. The sweetness exploded in her mouth, and for a moment, she forgot everything else. When she finished, Mama Sola was watching her with sad, knowing eyes. "What's your name?" "Amara DK, Mama." "Well, Amara, you can sweep around my stall if you want. Keep the area clean. I can't pay you, but I can give you fruit and water. Is that fair?" Amara nodded, afraid that if she spoke she would cry. She spent the next 2 hours sweeping, organizing empty crates, and chasing away the aggressive crows that tried to steal from the fruit displays. It wasn't much, but it was something. It made her feel human again. Around 11 o'clock, the character of the market changed. A ripple of excitement moved through the crowd like electricity. Vendors began straightening their displays, smoothing their clothes. Someone turned up a radio, and high-life music blared from tinny speakers. Amara looked up from her sweeping, confused. "What's happening, Mama?" Mama Sola's face lit up. "You don't know? Chief Namdi Kalu is coming, the billionaire himself. He's opening a new community center nearby and decided to visit the market first. They say he might give out money." The old woman clapped her hands together excitedly. "This is good luck, Amara. Very good luck." Amara had heard of Chief Kalu, of course. Everyone in Metro City had. He owned factories, real estate, banks. His face was on billboards advertising everything from mobile phones to political campaigns. He was one of those people who seemed to exist in a different reality from hers, so far above that he might as well be on the moon. The crowd was already forming, people abandoning their stalls to line the main walkway through the market. Amara hung back, staying near Mama Sola's cart. She had no interest in jostling with hundreds of people just to catch a glimpse of someone who would never even see her. But then she noticed him, a man in an expensive gray suit, standing near the front of the crowd, but somehow separate from it. He was sweating despite the shade, and his eyes darted nervously left and right. Something about his body language made Amara pause, while everyone else was looking toward the entrance where Chief Kalu would appear. This man was rubbing his right palm obsessively, and there was something on his hand that glittered faintly in the sunlight. Amara's breath caught. The glitter. She had seen something like that before. The memory hit her like a physical blow, transporting her back 2 years to another market in another part of the city. She had been newer to street life then, still believing that her situation was temporary. There had been a man, a street performer, who did magic tricks for coins. One day, his rival had approached him to shake hands and make peace after a public argument. The handshake had seemed friendly. The street performer had died 3 hours later, screaming in agony as his skin blistered and his throat closed. The poison had been on his rival's palm, Amara learned later, activated by the heat and moisture of skin contact. The rival had worn gloves when he applied it. The police had never caught him. Amara had watched from a doorway as they carried the performer's body away, and she had never forgotten the glittering substance on his hand, or the way his rival had rubbed his palm, just like the nervous man in the gray suit was doing now. No, Amara thought. No, it can't be. But even as she tried to dismiss it, her instincts screamed otherwise. She knew that body language, the guilt, the fear, the compulsive rubbing. This man was preparing to kill someone, and there was only one person important enough here to murder. The crowd erupted in cheers. Chief Namdi Kalu had arrived. He emerged from a sleek black SUV that had somehow navigated the narrow market lanes, flanked by security guards in dark suits and sunglasses. The chief himself was exactly what Amara expected. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in traditional white agbada that probably cost more than every item in this market combined. His face was round and pleasant, with the easy smile of someone who had never worried about where his next meal would come from. He waved at the crowd like a benevolent king, and they ate it up, chanting his name. Chief Kalu, Chief Kalu, Chief Kalu. Amara watched as he made his way through the market, stopping to shake hands, pose for selfies, exchange greetings in multiple languages. He was good at this, she realized. He knew how to make people feel seen, even if he would forget them the moment he left. The crowd pressed closer, everyone wanting their moment with greatness. And there, working his way toward the chief through the crush of bodies, was the man in the gray suit. He had stopped rubbing his palm, but Amara could still see the faint glitter. As he moved, she noticed he was careful not to touch anyone, keeping his right hand slightly raised, protected. Amara's heart hammered against her ribs. She looked around wildly. Should she shout? Would anyone believe her? She was a homeless girl, dirty and desperate. The man was clearly wealthy, well-connected, positioned close to the chief for a reason. Who would take her word over his? But then she saw it happen in slow motion. Chief Kalu finished greeting a woman selling fabrics and turned. The man in the gray suit stepped forward smoothly, professionally. He said something Amara couldn't hear over the noise. Chief Kalu smiled and extended his right hand for a handshake. Amara didn't think. Thinking would have paralyzed her. Instead, she dropped her broom and ran. "Move, move!" she screamed, shoving through the crowd. People cursed at her, pushed back. A man grabbed her arm, trying to stop her, but she twisted away with the desperate strength of someone who had fought for survival her entire life. Security guards noticed the commotion and started moving toward her, but they were too far away, too slow. Chief Kalu's hand was 6 inches from the poisoned palm, 4 inches, 2 inches. Amara burst through the final layer of people and did the only thing she could think of. She swung her arm with all her strength and slapped Chief Namdi Kalu across the face as hard as she had ever hit anything in her life. The sound was explosive. The chief's head snapped to the side. His sunglasses flew off. For one crystallized moment, the entire market went silent. Hundreds of people froze, their brains unable to process what they had just witnessed. A homeless girl, the city's most powerful man, a slap that would be replayed 1,000,000 times on social media before the sun set. Then chaos. Security guards swarmed Amara from every direction. Strong hands grabbed her arms, her hair, her torn shirt. Someone's knee drove into her spine, forcing her down. Her face hit the concrete and she tasted blood. The crowd's roar was deafening, a mixture of outrage and disbelief. "Don't touch his hand," Amara screamed into the ground, her words distorted by the weight pressing on her back. "The man in gray, the powder on his palm, he'll die if he touches it." Nobody listened. Why would they? They saw only a crazy street girl attacking an important man. A security guard yanked her arms behind her back so hard she felt something pop in her shoulder. The pain was blinding. "You mad girl," another guard shouted in her ear. "You've gone mad." Through her tears and the forest of legs surrounding her, Amara caught one last glimpse of the man in the gray suit. He was backing away using the chaos as cover. His face was pale with shock, but he was moving toward the edge of the crowd, toward escape. Their eyes met for just a second, and Amara saw the truth there, cold calculation and murderous intent. Then he turned and disappeared into the market's maze of stalls. Amara was dragged to her feet, or rather, dragged across the ground toward a white security van parked nearby. Her knees scraped against concrete. Blood ran down her leg where the skin had torn. The crowd followed, some filming, others shouting suggestions for her punishment. "Beat her. She's possessed. Take her to the madhouse." Chief Kalu had been helped to his feet by his entourage. His cheek was bright red with the imprint of Amara's hand. He touched it gingerly, his expression cycling between shock, anger, and humiliation. When he spoke, his voice was tight with barely controlled fury. "Take her to the station," he commanded. "I want her charged with assault, battery, everything. How dare she? How dare this thing touch me?" Amara tried to speak, but a guard clamped his hand over her mouth. "Shut up before we make you shut up," he hissed. They threw her into the back of the van like a sack of garbage. The doors slammed shut, cutting off the sunlight and the noise of the crowd. Amara curled into a ball on the metal floor, her body screaming with pain, her mind racing with the horrible certainty that she had just destroyed her own life to save a man who would never believe her, never thank her, never even remember her name. A van lurched forward. Through the small barred window, Amara could see Mama Sola standing at the edge of the dispersing crowd, her hand over her mouth, her fruit cart abandoned. At least someone looked sorry. At least someone had seen her as human, even if only for a morning. The police station was exactly what Amara expected. Fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry insects, peeling paint, a waiting room full of exhausted people who had been there for hours. The guards hauled her past all of it, through a corridor that smelled of sweat and disinfectant, into a small interrogation room with one table, 2 chairs, and a mirror that was obviously one-way glass. They shoved her into a chair and cuffed her hands to the table. Then they left her there, alone, hurting, for what felt like hours, but was probably only 40 minutes. When the door finally opened, Amara expected another angry guard, or maybe a lawyer from Chief Kalu's team ready to destroy her in court. Instead, a woman entered. She was perhaps 40, tall and slim, wearing a crisp police uniform with a detective's badge clipped to her belt. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her eyes were sharp and intelligent, missing nothing as they swept over Amara's bruised face and torn clothes. "My name is Detective Zainab Lawal," the woman said, sitting across from Amara. Her voice was calm, neutral, giving nothing away. "I'm here to ask you some questions about what happened at Oshodi Market this afternoon." Amara said nothing. What could she say that would make any difference? Detective Lawal opened a folder and pulled out several printed photographs. They showed Amara from multiple angles, running through the crowd, her arm raised, the moment of impact. In every picture, she looked wild, dangerous, insane. "These are from witnesses' phones," the detective said. "They've already gone viral. 7 million views and counting. You're famous, Amara Dyke. Everyone in the city wants to know why a homeless girl would attack Chief Kalu in broad daylight in front of hundreds of people." She paused, watching Amara carefully. "So why don't you tell me?" "He was going to die," Amara said quietly. Her throat was raw from screaming. "There was a man, gray suit. He had poison on his palm. Chief Kalu was about to shake his hand. Detective Lawal's expression didn't change. Poison. Yes, a powder. It kills on skin contact. I saw someone die from it before. 2 years ago, in Acacia Market. The man in the suit, he was rubbing his palm the same way. I saw it glittering. I knew what it was. And instead of alerting security or shouting a warning, you decided to run through a crowd and physically assault the chief. There was no time, Amara's voice cracked. He was right there. His hand was out. The man was about to touch him. I did the only thing I could think of. Detective Lawal wrote something in her notepad. Her face was unreadable. Can you describe this man in the gray suit? Tall, maybe 45, 50, light skin, expensive clothes, but he was sweating too much, nervous. His right palm had the powder on it. After I hit the chief, he ran away. Nobody else saw him because everyone was looking at me. So this mysterious poisoner just vanished into thin air? It's not a story. Amara slammed her cuffed hands on the table, making the chain rattle. Why would I make this up? Why would I destroy my own life for attention? Do you think I wanted this? For the first time, Detective Lawal's professional mask cracked slightly. Something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or maybe just exhaustion at another day in a system designed to grind people like Amara into dust. Do you know who Chief Kalu is? The detective asked quietly. Of course. Then you know he could bury you, literally, make you disappear. He has the money, the connections, the power. Men like him don't forgive public humiliation. Then why hasn't he killed me already? Detective Lawal stood up and walked to the one-way mirror, studying her own reflection. When she spoke again, her voice was so soft, Amara almost didn't hear it. Because I asked him to wait 24 hours. I told him you might be mentally ill, that rushing to judgment would look bad in the media. But that's all the time you have, Amara. 24 hours. Unless you can give me something real, something concrete, you're going to prison for a very long time. Amara felt tears burning her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had cried enough in her life. I'm telling the truth. I believe that you believe that, Detective Lawal said, and there was something in her tone that made Amara look up sharply. But belief isn't evidence. Give me something I can use. The powder. Check Chief Kalu's hand, his clothes, anything near where I hit him. The man in gray was reaching for a handshake. Some of it might have transferred. Detective Lawal tilted her head, considering. That's actually not a bad idea. She moved toward the door, then paused with her hand on the knob. For what it's worth, I've seen a lot of liars in this room. You don't look like one. You look scared, hurt, and desperate, but not dishonest. That counts for something. Then she was gone, leaving Amara alone with her pain and her rapidly fading hope. Hours crawled by. Amara dozed in the chair, too exhausted to stay awake, but too uncomfortable to really sleep. At some point, someone brought her a bottle of water and a paper plate with rice and stew. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing, her mind spinning through worst-case scenarios. Prison, Chief Kalu's revenge, disappearing into the system like so many others. Who would miss her? Who would even notice she was gone? When the door opened again, it was full dark outside. Detective Lawal entered, but this time, she wasn't alone. She was followed by 2 men in lab coats and a uniformed officer Amara hadn't seen before. The detective's face was carefully blank, but there was an energy around her, a tension that made Amara's heart start racing. We ran the tests, Detective Lawal said without preamble. She placed a document on the table in front of Amara. It was covered in scientific terminology and numbers Amara couldn't understand. But there was one word circled in red pen. Positive. Chief Kalu had trace amounts of a neurotoxin on his right palm and wrist, the detective continued, her voice very precise, very controlled. The same compound that was used in the Acacia Market murder 2 years ago. It's rare, expensive, and highly regulated. Without immediate treatment, contact would have caused respiratory failure within 3 to 6 hours. Amara couldn't speak. She couldn't breathe. The room seemed to tilt. We pulled CCTV from the market. Detective Lawal continued. We found your man in the gray suit. His name is Victor Bale. He was Chief Kalu's business partner 15 years ago, until the chief discovered he was embezzling and had him arrested. Victor served 8 years in prison. He was released 6 months ago. She paused, letting that sink in. We also found footage of him leaving the market approximately 90 seconds after you struck the chief. He's driving a rented Mercedes. We have officers looking for him now. I told you, Amara whispered. I told you the truth. Detective Lawal sat down heavily. For a moment, she looked very tired. Yes, you did. And I almost didn't believe you. Do you know why? Amara shook her head. Because in my experience, homeless people lie a lot. They lie to get food, to avoid beatings, to survive. So when one of them tells me an extraordinary story about saving a billionaire from an invisible assassin, my first instinct is skepticism. She met Amara's eyes. I'm ashamed of that instinct right now. One of the men in lab coats cleared his throat. We've administered the antitoxin to Chief Kalu as a precaution. He's fine, but he was quite shaken when we explained what would have happened without Ms. Deek's intervention. Where is he? Amara asked. Making phone calls, Detective Lawal said. A lot of them. The media is going to have a field day with this story. And he's trying to control the narrative. She stood and pulled out a key for the handcuffs. You're free to go, Amara, with the city's deepest apologies. The cuffs fell away. Amara rubbed her wrists, staring at the red marks the metal had left. Free, the word didn't feel real. We'll need you to make a formal statement, the detective added, and there will probably be reporters. A lot of reporters. Are you prepared for? Amara thought about the reporters she had seen on television, microphones thrust in people's faces, cameras recording every moment. She thought about those 7 million views the detective had mentioned. All those people who had watched her attack a billionaire without understanding why. Would they understand now? Would they care? I don't know, she admitted. That's honest. Detective Lawal handed her a business card. This is my direct number. Call me if you need anything. Protection, a safe place to stay, whatever. I owe you that much. Amara took the card with numb fingers. She wanted to feel relieved, vindicated, triumphant even. Instead, she just felt empty. She had saved a man's life and destroyed her own anonymity in the process. What came next? The uniformed officer led her out through a different exit to avoid the reporters who had apparently gathered at the front of the station. But as Amara stepped into the warm night air, she saw someone waiting by a black SUV parked in the shadows. Chief Namdi Kalu. He looked different than he had in the market. Smaller somehow, less certain. The red mark on his face had faded to pink, but it was still visible. When he saw Amara, he didn't smile or approach. He just stood there, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Detective Lawal put a hand on Amara's shoulder. He asked to see you. I can tell him no if you want. Amara considered it. This man had called her a thing, had ordered her arrest, had been ready to crush her without a second thought. But he had also almost died, and she had saved him, and maybe that meant something. It's okay, she said quietly. She walked toward the SUV slowly, aware of Detective Lawal, watching from the station door, ready to intervene if necessary. Chief Kalu stepped forward to meet her halfway, and up close, Amara could see details she had missed before. The gray in his hair, the lines around his eyes, the expensive watch on his wrist that probably cost enough to feed 100 families for a year. Miss Dike, he said, and his voice was hoarse. I owe you an apology. You owe me more than that, Amara said, surprising herself with her bluntness. But what did she have to lose now? Her reputation was already destroyed. You called me a thing. You wanted me locked away. You didn't even try to hear what I was saying. Chief Kalu flinched. You're right. I was angry, humiliated, and wrong. When Detective Lawal showed me the lab results, when she explained what that poison would have done, he trailed off, shaking his head. I would have died tonight, probably alone in my bed, thinking I had food poisoning or a heart attack. No one would have known it was murder. Victor would have gotten away with it, all because of you. Because I hit you, Amara said flatly. Because you were brave enough to do what no one else would. He corrected. Everyone else at that market saw me as Chief Kalu, the billionaire, the untouchable man. You saw me as someone who needed help, and you helped, even though you knew it would cost you everything. He paused, searching for words. That's the kind of courage I've spent 50 years trying to buy with money. And you just did it, because it was right. Amara felt a lump forming in her throat. I'm still homeless, Chief. I'm still hungry. Your words don't change that. No, he agreed. They don't. But maybe my actions can. He gestured to the SUV. Tomorrow morning, I'm holding a press conference at Oshodi Market, the same place where this happened. I want you there beside me when I explain what really occurred. I want everyone who saw you as a crazy girl attacking me to know that you saved my life. And after that, if you'll accept, I want to offer you a place in my foundation, housing, education, a job. Not as charity, but as the beginning of repayment for a debt I can never truly settle. Amara stared at him, afraid to believe it, afraid it's a trick or a dream she would wake from back on the market floor. Why? Because I almost died today, and it made me think about legacy. What will people remember about Nnamdi Kalu? That he was rich? That he built buildings and made money? He looked up at the stars barely visible through Lagos's light pollution. Or that when a girl with nothing saw him in danger, she risked everything to save him. And he was wise enough to recognize that gift. The press will be everywhere, Amara said slowly. Yes, people will see me, judge me. Yes, they'll call me a fraud, say I made it up, say I attacked you and got lucky. Chief Kalu smiled sadly. Probably, but Detective Lawal has the evidence. The lab results, the CCTV footage. The truth is the truth, even when people refuse to see it. Will you do this with me? Amara thought about Mama Sola, who had given her an orange without asking for anything in return. She thought about her mother in her dream, telling her she was stronger than she knew. She thought about every person who had stepped over her on the street, looked through her like she was invisible, treated her like she was less than human. Tomorrow, they would all see her, really see her, not as a homeless girl or a victim or a charity case, but as someone who had done something that mattered. Yes, she said, I'll do it. The next morning, Oshodi Market was more crowded than Amara had ever seen it. A makeshift stage had been erected in the central plaza, with microphones and cameras and reporters from every news station in the city. The crowd was massive, pressing in from all sides, held back by police barriers and security guards. Amara spotted Mama Sola in the front row, tears already streaming down her face. Chief Kalu took the podium first. He was dressed in traditional attire again, but his demeanor was different than it had been yesterday. More humble, more human. When he spoke, his voice carried through the speakers across the entire market. Yesterday, I came to this place as a proud man, he began. I came to give charity, to be seen, to remind people of my importance. And yesterday, this place taught me a lesson I will never forget. He paused, letting the crowd settle. Many of you saw what happened. A young woman appeared to attack me in front of everyone. What you didn't see was why. He gestured to Amara, who stood behind him on the stage, wearing clean clothes provided by Chief Kalu's staff, but still looking painfully out of place among the dignitaries and politicians who had gathered. She stepped forward on shaking legs. This is Miss Amara DK, Chief Kalu continued, and she saved my life. The crowd murmured. Phones came up, cameras rolling. Chief Kalu spent the next 10 minutes explaining everything. Victor Bale's plot, the poison, the handshake that would have killed him, and Amara's desperate intervention. He showed copies of the lab results, played CCTV footage on large screens. By the time he finished, the crowd's murmuring had turned to stunned silence. Victor Bale was apprehended last night, trying to board a flight to South Africa. Detective Lawal added, stepping to the microphone. She looked professional and authoritative in her uniform. He has confessed to attempted murder. Without Miss DK's actions, Chief Kalu would be dead, and we would be investigating what appeared to be natural causes. Chief Kalu turned to face Amara directly. Miss DK, you saw something no one else saw. You did something no one else would do, and I repaid you with cruelty and judgment. His voice broke slightly. I am deeply, profoundly sorry. In front of everyone gathered here, I ask your forgiveness. Amara looked out at the sea of faces. Some looked skeptical. Some looked moved. Some were still filming, still judging, still deciding what they believed. But Mama Sola was crying and clapping. And behind the barriers, Amara could see other street people, the invisible ones, who understood what it meant to be dismissed, to be called crazy, to have the truth in your mouth, but no platform to speak it from. They were watching her with something like hope. She stepped closer to the microphone. Her voice shook at first, barely audible over the murmur of the crowd. "I forgive you, Chief," she said simply. Then she turned to address everyone gathered. "I didn't do this for reward or recognition. I did it because when you see someone about to die, you don't stop to think about who they are or who you are. You just act." She swallowed hard, feeling the weight of 1,000 eyes. "For months, I've been invisible to most of you. You've walked past me, looked through me, stepped over me like I was trash on the street. Yesterday, you were ready to have me beaten or locked away because I dared to touch someone important." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some people looked away. "But I'm still here," Amara continued, her voice growing stronger. "And maybe that means something. Maybe it means that worth isn't measured by the size of your bank account or the roof over your head. Maybe it means we should see each other, really see each other, because the person you ignore today might be the person who saves your life tomorrow." The silence that followed was absolute. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, someone started clapping. Then another person. Then another. Within seconds, the applause was thunderous, rolling across the market like a wave. Some people were crying, others were cheering. Amara stood there, overwhelmed, barely able to process what was happening. Chief Kalu placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I've prepared something for you," he said quietly, pulling an envelope from his pocket. "Keys to a 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood, fully furnished, paid for 10 years in advance." He handed her a second envelope. "And enrollment papers for the University of Lagos, if you want to continue your education. Full scholarship. You mentioned you never finished school." Amara took the envelopes with trembling hands. "Chief, there's more," he interrupted gently. "A position at the Kalu Foundation as a community outreach coordinator. You'll work with homeless populations, help people like you used to be. Nobody understands their needs better than someone who's lived it. The salary is fair, and you start whenever you're ready." The tears Amara had been holding back for days, months, years, finally broke through. They streamed down her face as Chief Kalu pulled her into an embrace that cameras captured from every angle. The crowd's applause grew even louder. Mama Sola was openly sobbing, her hands clasped in prayer. "I need you to understand something," Chief Kalu said, pulling back to look Amara in the eyes. "This isn't charity. This isn't guilt. This is recognition of what you did and who you are. You have value, Mystique. You always did. I was just too blind to see it until you slapped some sense into me." He smiled at his own joke, and despite everything, Amara found herself laughing through her tears. Detective Lawal stepped forward and handed Amara her business card again. "I meant what I said last night. You need anything, you call me. And I'd like to take your statement about that Ikeja Market murder you witnessed 2 years ago. Maybe we can finally give that street performer's family some closure." "I'd like that," Amara whispered. The press conference continued for another 30 minutes with questions from reporters, statements from city officials, and even a surprise appearance by the mayor, who smelled a positive photo opportunity and wanted to be part of the narrative. But Amara barely heard any of it. She stood on that stage, holding her envelopes, feeling the sun on her face and the solid ground beneath her feet. And for the first time, in longer than she could remember, she felt real. When it was finally over, when the cameras had been packed away and the crowd had dispersed back to their normal lives, Mama Sola fought her way through the remaining security to reach Amara. The old woman grabbed her in a fierce hug, laughing and crying at the same time. "I knew it," Mama Sola said, cupping Amara's face in her weathered hands. "When I saw you this morning, I knew God had plans for you. Big plans. Look at you now, child. Look at you." "Thank you for the orange, Mama," Amara said, fresh tears spilling over. "Thank you for seeing me." "I will always see you," Mama Sola promised. "You come back and visit this old woman, you hear? Don't forget us little people now that you're moving up in the world. I could never forget you, Amara said truthfully. You were kind when you didn't have to be. That matters more than anything Chief Kalu can give me. Chief Kalu approached with his security detail. Miss Deek, I have a car waiting to take you to your new apartment, if you're ready. Amara looked around the market one last time. The stalls where she had begged for work. The concrete where she had slept, cold and afraid. The spot where just 24 hours ago she had been nobody, nothing, invisible. Now she was leaving, not as a victim or a charity case, but as someone who had changed her own story through sheer courage and quick thinking. I'm ready, she said. The ride to her new apartment took them through parts of Metro City Amara had only seen from a distance. Tree-lined streets with neat houses behind gated compounds. Shopping centers with bright lights and clean sidewalks. Parks where children played on actual equipment instead of in garbage-strewn vacant lots. It was like entering another world. The apartment building was modest, by Chief Kalu standards, but to Amara it might as well have been a palace. 5 stories of cream-colored concrete with balconies overlooking a small courtyard garden. Chief Kalu's assistant, a brisk woman named Mrs. Adeyemi, met them in the lobby with a bright smile. Miss Deek, welcome home. She handed Amara a set of keys attached to a small leather fob embossed with the building's name. You're in apartment 3B. I'm taken the liberty of stocking your kitchen with essentials, and there are fresh linens on the bed. Here's the building manager's number, the security contact, and my personal mobile if you need anything at all. Home. The word echoed in Amara's mind as they rode the elevator to the 3rd floor. When had she last had a home? When had she last belonged somewhere? Mrs. Adeyemi opened the door to 3B, and Amara stepped inside. The apartment was simple but beautiful. A living room with a soft couch and television, a small kitchen with modern appliances, a dining table that could seat 4. Down a short hallway were 2 bedrooms and a bathroom with a real shower, not a bucket and a tap behind a market stall. The 2nd bedroom is set up as an office, Mrs. Adeyemi explained. We thought you might want space to study, since you'll be attending university. There's a laptop on the desk, and we've arranged for internet installation tomorrow. Amara walked through each room slowly, touching the furniture, the walls, the door frames, making sure they were real. In the main bedroom, she found a closet with new clothes in her size. Jeans, shirts, dresses, shoes. On the bed was a gift box with a note in Chief Kalu's handwriting. For new beginnings, may you never be invisible again. She sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the soft mattress beneath her, and let herself cry. Not from sadness this time, but from the overwhelming release of tension she had carried for so long. She had survived, against all odds. Against all expectations, she had survived and somehow found her way to something better. Mrs. Adeyemi quietly excused herself, leaving Amara alone in her new home. As evening fell, Amara stood on her small balcony, looking out over the city. Somewhere out there, other people were sleeping on market floors tonight. Other invisible people were being told they didn't matter, that they were nothing. She couldn't save them all, but maybe, just maybe, she could save some. She thought about her new job at the foundation, about the chance to help people who reminded her of who she had been just days ago. She thought about the university, about learning things she had only dreamed of understanding. She thought about Detective Lal and the promise to help solve an old murder, to give someone's family the closure they deserved. Most of all, she thought about that moment in the market when she had run forward despite knowing it would cost her everything. That moment of pure, selfless action when she had seen another human being in danger and simply refused to let them die. That moment had changed her life. But more importantly, it had proven something she had almost forgotten. She mattered. She had always mattered. The world had just needed to be reminded. The next morning, Amara woke in a real bed for the first time in months. Sunlight streamed through curtains she could actually close. She took a hot shower that lasted 20 minutes, washing away layers of street grime and bad memories. She dressed in new clothes that fit properly. She made breakfast in her kitchen, simple eggs and bread, but it tasted like the finest meal she had ever eaten because it was hers. Her phone rang. Chief Kalu had given her a new phone with his number already programmed in. She answered nervously, ... Good morning, Miss Dyke. His warm voice came through. "I hope you slept well. I wanted to let you know that Victor Bale was formally charged this morning with attempted murder. The prosecutor says it's an open and shut case thanks to your testimony and the evidence. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison." "Good," Amara said, surprised by the hardness in her own voice. She wasn't a vengeful person, but Victor had tried to murder someone and nearly succeeded. He deserved whatever punishment came. Also, Chief Kalu continued, "The Foundation would like you to come in next week for orientation. No pressure, take your time settling in, but we're excited to have you on the team. And Amara?" His voice softened. "Thank you, again, always." After they hung up, Amara found herself smiling. She went back to the balcony with a cup of tea and watched the city wake up below her. Cars honked, people hurried to work. Life continued its relentless forward motion, but she was part of it now, not watching from the margins, not invisible and ignored, but actually part of the fabric of society. Her phone buzzed with a text from Detective Lawal. "Coffee this week? Want to hear more about that Ikija case when you're ready. No rush. Z." Another text, this one from a number she didn't recognize. "This is Mama Sola. Mrs. Adeyemi gave me your number. Come visit your mama when you have time. I'm praying for you every day. Your mama." Amara saved both numbers and replied with promises to meet soon. She was building a life now, a network of people who saw her, who valued her, who believed in her. It felt fragile and precious, like something that could shatter if she moved too quickly, but it was real. Over the following weeks, Amara threw herself into her new life with the same determination that had kept her alive on the streets. She attended orientation at the Kalu Foundation, where she met other staff members who worked on homelessness initiatives, youth programs, and community development. Some of them looked at her with curiosity, tinged with skepticism. The girl who slapped a billionaire and somehow ended up with a job, but she didn't let their doubts slow her down. Her role as community outreach coordinator involved visiting homeless shelters, distributing supplies, and most importantly, talking to people living on the streets. She knew how to approach them, how to earn their trust, because she had been them. When a teenager sleeping behind a restaurant refused food from other volunteers, Amara sat beside him and said, "I was you 3 weeks ago, sleeping in Oshodi Market, invisible to everyone. I know what you're feeling." And the boy looked at her, really looked, and took the food. She enrolled at the University of Lagos in a social work program. The first day of classes, she sat in a lecture hall surrounded by students 10 years younger than her, fresh from high school with no understanding of real poverty. When the professor asked if anyone had personal experience with homelessness, Amara raised her hand. She told her story, and the room fell silent. After class, several students approached her, asking questions, wanting to understand. She became an unofficial educator, teaching them things no textbook could convey. Detective Lawal became a friend. They met for coffee regularly, and Amara provided detailed testimony about the Ikija Market murder she had witnessed years ago. The case was reopened, and 3 months later, the killer was arrested based on Amara's identification and new forensic evidence. The street performer's widow came to thank Amara personally, bringing her children, giving Amara a hug that lasted several minutes. "You gave us closure," the widow said through tears. "You gave us justice when the system had forgotten us. Thank you." Amara visited Mama Sola every Sunday, bringing groceries and helping with the fruit stand. The old woman refused to accept money, but allowed Amara to sit with her, share meals, talk about life. Mama Sola became the grandmother Amara had lost, a source of wisdom and unconditional love. Chief Kalu kept his distance, respecting Amara's need to build her own identity separate from his charity. But every few weeks, he would check in, asking how she was adjusting, if she needed anything. Once he invited her to dinner at his home, a sprawling mansion that made her new apartment look tiny. His wife, a kind woman with intelligent eyes, treated Amara like family. "My husband was a good man before he met you," Mrs. Kalu said over dessert. "But you made him a better one. You reminded him that wealth means nothing if it doesn't translate to compassion. Thank you for that." 6 months after the slap that changed everything, Amara was invited to speak at a conference on urban poverty. She stood at a podium in a hotel ballroom filled with NGO workers, government officials, and philanthropists. Her hands shook as she gripped the microphone, but her voice came out strong. "Invisible people see everything," she began. "When you're homeless, when society has decided you don't matter, you become a witness to the world in ways privileged people never experience. You see who drops money in a beggar's cup when no one is watching. You see which shop owners save their day-old bread for the hungry instead of throwing it away. You see the small cruelties and the unexpected kindnesses that define humanity." She told them about Mama Sola's orange, about the security guards who beat her, about Chief Kalu's transformation, about the street performer who died because no one investigated his death properly until years later. She told them about invisible people who deserve to be seen, not as problems to be solved, but as human beings with agency and worth. The speech received a standing ovation. Afterward, 3 different organizations offered her consulting positions. A publisher asked if she would consider writing a book about her experiences. A documentary filmmaker wanted to tell her story. It was overwhelming, but Amara had learned to navigate overwhelming. She had survived worse than success. A year after the slap heard round Metro City, Amara stood once again in Oshodi Market. But this time, she wasn't there to scavenge or beg. She was there for the grand opening of the Amara Dike Community Center, a facility funded by Chief Kalu's foundation, but named in her honor. It offered free meals, shower facilities, job training, and temporary housing assistance for homeless individuals. The crowd that gathered was enormous, including many of the same people who had watched her get beaten and arrested 12 months ago. The mayor was there, the press was there, and in the front row, surrounded by other street vendors, was Mama Sola, beaming with pride. Chief Kalu handed Amara the ceremonial scissors to cut the ribbon. "This center exists because you showed us that homeless people aren't problems," he said into the microphone. "They're people who have encountered problems. That distinction matters. It changes everything." Amara cut the ribbon, and the crowd erupted in applause. As people filed inside to tour the new facility, she noticed a young girl, maybe 17, standing at the edge of the crowd. The girl was dirty, barefoot, wearing torn clothes. She looked exactly like Amara had looked a year ago. Amara walked over to her slowly, non-threateningly. "Hi," she said simply. "I'm Amara." The girl's eyes were wary, defensive. "I know who you are. Everyone knows who you are. What's your name? Why do you care?" "Because I was you," Amara said quietly. "A year ago, I was sleeping in this market, hungry and invisible. I know what it feels like when the world treats you like you don't exist." The girl's defenses cracked slightly. "Grace," she whispered. "My name is Grace." "Well, Grace, I want you to know something." Amara pointed to the community center behind them. "That building is for you, not for who you might become someday, but for who you are right now. You deserve food and safety and dignity, not because you earned it or proved yourself, but because you're human, and being human is enough." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "I don't have anything to give you." "I'm not asking for anything," Amara said. "I'm just offering. Come inside, take a hot shower, eat a real meal, talk to our counselors if you want, or just rest. No judgment, no strings, just help." Grace hesitated for a long moment, then nodded. Amara walked her inside, past the cameras and the politicians and the celebrating crowd. She introduced Grace to the center's staff, made sure she had food and clean clothes, then left her alone to process everything in her own time. Some people needed space more than they needed words. As the celebration continued outside, Amara found a quiet corner and called her mother's number. It had been disconnected for 3 years, but she called it anyway, listening to the automated message that told her the number was no longer in service. It was a ritual she did sometimes when she needed to feel connected to who she had been, where she came from. "I did it, Mama," she whispered into the dead line. "I survived. More than that, I'm helping others survive. You always said I was stronger than I knew. I think you were right." She hung up and went back outside where Detective Lawal was waiting with a proud smile. Mrs. Adeyemi was there too, along with several of Amara's university classmates who had volunteered to help at the center. Mama Sola had saved her a plate of jollof rice and fried plantains. As the sun began to set over Oshodi Market, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds, Amara looked around at all the people who had become her community. A year ago, she had been nothing to them, less than nothing. And now, she was the center of something meaningful, something that would help hundreds of people who reminded her of the girl she had been. She thought about that moment when she had run through the crowd to slap Chief Kalu, how terrified she had been, how certain that she was destroying her life, how wrong she had been about almost everything except the one thing that mattered. Saving someone's life was worth any cost. Her phone buzzed with a text from Chief Kalu, "Proud of you, always will be." Amara smiled and typed back, "Thank you for seeing me," because that's what it had all been about, really. Being seen, being recognized as human, being understood as someone whose actions and choices and courage mattered. Regardless of status or wealth or circumstance, the community center would help thousands of people over the years. Grace would eventually become one of its success stories, graduating from the training program and finding stable employment. The video of Amara slapping Chief Kalu would be played millions more times, becoming a case study in university classes about snap judgments and social bias. Detective Lawal would close 4 more cold cases based on information from homeless witnesses who finally felt safe coming forward. But in that moment, as Amara sat in the market where her life had changed, surrounded by people who loved her, eating food that Mama Sola had prepared with care, she wasn't thinking about any of that. She was just thinking about how far she had come, how much she had survived, how impossible this would have seemed when she was curled up on the cold concrete just 1 year ago. "Hey," Mama Sola said, nudging her gently. "You're smiling like you have a secret. What are you thinking about?" Amara looked at the old woman who had given her an orange when she had nothing. The woman who had shown kindness without asking for anything in return. The woman who had seen her as human when everyone else had looked away. "I'm thinking about how one moment can change everything," Amara said. "One moment of courage, one moment of kindness, one decision to act instead of walking away." "That's a good thought," Mama Sola said, patting her hand. "Hold on to that one," and Amara did. She held on to it through everything that came after. The speaking tours, the advocacy work, the countless people she helped pull out of the same darkness she had known. She held on to the memory of being invisible and the radical act of making herself seen, even when it cost her everything she thought mattered, because in the end, she had learned the most important lesson life could teach. Your worth isn't determined by what you have or where you sleep or how others see you. It's determined by what you do when it matters most. And on one chaotic afternoon in Oshodi Market, Amara Dike had proven that she mattered more than she ever imagined possible. The slack that shocked a city became the moment that saved 2 lives, Chief Kalu's, obviously, but also her own. She had saved herself by refusing to be invisible, by trusting her instincts, by choosing courage over comfort. And in doing so, she had shown an entire city that heroism doesn't wear expensive clothes or live in gated compounds. Sometimes it sleeps on the street. Sometimes it goes hungry. Sometimes it has nothing except the unshakable conviction that every life is worth fighting for. If you found Amara's story powerful, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss stories that remind us all what courage really looks like. Drop a comment below telling us about a time you stood up for what was right, even when it was hard. And smash that like button if you believe that everyone, absolutely everyone, deserves to be seen. Thank you for watching, and remember, you never know when the person you're ignoring today might be the hero who saves your life tomorrow.